Hey guys, so today I'm going to be talking about the books that I managed to read this week for the Reread-A-Thon 2018, which was a read-a-thon created by Murphy Napier, and I was one of the 21 hosts for the week. It was fun, but I did end up having kind of a busy, stressful week with uni, so I didn't get as much reading done as I would have liked just because I didn't have as much time on my hands as I thought that I might have, but I did get some reading done and it was really enjoyable for the most part, so it's just so fun to reread books. So my first reread for the week was Molly Moon Stops the World by Georgia Bing, and this was the book that I selected for the challenge to reread an old favourite. Molly Moon was a series that I loved as a child. It was my absolute favourite. It's about a girl hypnotist. She's an orphan, so she kind of uses hypnotism to change her life. This is the second book in the series. I picked the second one because I'd read the first one kind of recently, like within the last couple years. It had been a long time since I'd read this one, so it was so fun rereading it. I won't go too much into the plotline of this book in case you haven't read the first book in the Molly Moon series. I highly recommend it for everyone, even though it's a children's series. I think it's one that adults really enjoy as well. In this book, Molly and her friend Rocky go to LA. There's something bad going down in LA. There's a guy who's pretty much trying to take over the world using celebrities and things like that to get to people. So Molly and her friend Rocky have to go and try and stop him. A lot of crazy stuff happens and it's just such a fun setting. It was an interesting experience rereading it because I hadn't read this one, I don't think, since I was quite a bit younger, so reading it as an adult is really interesting. There are things that I guess I kind of just didn't click with when I was a kid. There are certain locations that were mentioned that I just didn't really get where they were because I didn't know much about LA that I kind of recognised this time around. And there's also one scene in particular that I remember being quite tense, like you're on the edge of your seat when I was a kid. But reading it as an adult, I'm surprised that I wasn't scared reading that scene as a kid. I suppose when you're a child and you're reading stories like this, it's all kind of in fun, and you kind of, as a child, you think that everything will be alright in the end, no matter how terrible it is. But there's a scene in this book that is particularly scary, and I was describing it to Will and he said it sounded like something out of Saw. Obviously it doesn't get like graphic or anything like that, but there's a moment where you think that it might, and it's pretty scary stuff. But yeah, this book is super fun. I'm so glad that I reread it, and it really makes me want to continue rereading the rest of the series now as well. I think I might do that. It's just such a fun series. Honestly, if you haven't read this, I highly recommend it. This is probably the one series that if I could force everyone to read it, I probably would. Like, that's how good it is. I love this series. My next reread for the week was Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs, and this was my book to read to give it a second chance because the first time I read this book, I just didn't really like it that much. I wasn't blown away by it. It was kind of a 3-star read, which for me means it's okay, but not one that I would necessarily want to reread. And usually I don't have 3-star kind of books on my shelf because I only buy books that I've read from the library already and know that I like. But this was one that I kind of bought spontaneously and then unfortunately didn't like it very much, so I wanted to reread it to see if I want to keep it or not. And again, I just found it quite dull. I don't know what it is with this book. This time around, knowing what happens oddly made me more interested in it. I felt like I was doing better with it than I was the first time because I kind of knew what was coming. So I think what that shows is that I do like the actual storyline of what happens in this book. It's just the writing that I find quite dull, and I couldn't get through it. I ended up DNFing it about halfway through because I just wasn't feeling it and I didn't feel motivated to pick it up or anything, and I just wasn't in the mood. And to be honest, I don't think I'll ever reread this book. I do think the story is cool and I love that the images and stuff are used in it. I think that does really add something to the story, and I think the whole premise of it is really cool. Just the writing is not for me. I don't know what it is about it, but it's just not a writing style that I like. I just found it dull. But I do think it is worth a go if you haven't read this yet. It's worth checking out because it is a cool story. It's just the writing style, something doesn't work for me. I don't really know exactly what it is. My final reread for the week that I'm actually still about halfway through, but I'm definitely going to finish it because I'm loving it, is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, and this was my choice for reread, a recent favourite. I first read this in 2016 and it was pretty much the first YA contemporary book that I really enjoyed. I love this book. It's about a girl called Kath who goes to university for the first time. She has a twin sister, but her twin doesn't want to spend as much time with her anymore, so she's really struggling being thrown into this new experience on her own. She suffers with anxiety as well, so she's dealing with that. She writes fan fiction. I feel like the majority of the story is just focused on the fact that she's started at university, which is something that I love. I love that collegiate kind of setting, and rereading this so far has been an absolute pleasure. I knew that I loved this book, so I knew that I would love rereading it, but somehow like rereading it reminds me how much I really love this book. It's probably one of my favorite books of all time. It is awesome. It's written in third person, which is odd. That's something I'd like noticed when I was rereading this. For some reason it feels like it's in first person from Kath's perspective, but it is actually in third person, so I think that's really clever when a third person novel is so personalized to the character that you can still hear their voice in it. I think that's amazing. So I love that about this book. That was something I kind of hadn't noticed the first time around that I did notice this time around. The other thing that I feel like my perspective has kind of changed a little bit with this reread is that Nick, I don't want to like say too much in case you haven't read this book, but there's a character called Nick. The first time I didn't really mind him, but this time around I'm hating Nick, but I think that's just because I know what happens. And actually people often say that when they reread this they skip over the fanfiction sections, but when I first read this book I hadn't read Carry On. Kath writes fanfiction about a character called Simon Snow, and Rainbow Rowell after this ended up writing her version of the Simon Snow story, which she called Carry On, and so there are snippets of the original Simon Snow books as well as Kath's fanfiction in this book, and a lot of people say when they reread them that they skip over those sections, but when I first read it I kind of didn't get them because I hadn't read Carry On. I didn't really care about Kath's fan fiction, but this time since I have read Carry On and since I love Simon and especially Baz, I'm obsessed with Baz, I really enjoyed reading those sections and kind of comparing to Rainbow Rowell's own version and Carry On with those characters, and then comparing that to the original Simon Snow and then with Kath's version, and especially how Kath writes Baz. I just really am enjoying those sections, which surprised me because I didn't think that I necessarily would. I thought I might be one of those people who skips over them as well, but I'm really enjoying those bits. So overall I'm enjoying every second of this reread, and yeah, I'm definitely going to be finishing it. I'm about halfway at the moment, so really enjoying this one. The only other book that I had on my TBR that I haven't gotten to was The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, which is one that I wanted to reread in preparation of the new release, which is the Ladies' Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, which is coming out. It was meant to be coming out later this year, but it might be coming out next year instead, and I was hoping to read The Gentleman's Guide, but I haven't got around to it. I still might reread that sometime soon because I do want to, and I was really excited for that one. But yeah, I just haven't had the time this week, and I feel like because that was the book that I'd most recently read out of all of these, I thought I would leave that one till last because I read it so recently that it's not a big deal if I don't get around to rereading it you know, this week or sometime soon, so I left that one. But I'm happy with the rereading that I got done this week considering how busy I've been, and it's been really fun. I really enjoyed hosting on Twitter for my day that I hosted. That was great. So that is it for my wrap up for the Reread-A-Thon for 2018. If you participated, let me know what books you reread in the comments down below, and if you've read any of these, let me know your thoughts on them. And if you're going to be picking any of them up, especially Molly Moon, someone please pick up Molly Moon and read it. The first one is called Molly Moon's Incredible Book of Hypnotism. If you're going to do that, let me know in the comments down below because that would make my day. But thank you guys for watching this, and I'll see you with another video in a couple days. Bye.